these are the events leading up to December 24th, 2002, and the background of Scott and Lacey. So, Scott and Lacey Peterson both met while they were living in San Luis Obispo, California. Lacey was attending college at Cal Poly, and Scott lived and worked in San Luis Obispo and would later attend and graduate from Cal Poly as well. Over the next 3 years, Lacey and Scott steadily dated, became engaged, and married in August of 1997. Lacey graduated from college the same year, and Scott graduated in 1998. After graduation, they started and ran a popular college hangout in San Luis called The Shack. Scott did the cooking, and Lacey worked up front. In 2000, they sold the shack and moved to Modesto, California, where Lacey was raised. Lacey and Scott lived with Lacey's mum, Sharon Roca, and stepfather, Ron Gransky, for several weeks before renting and then buying a home in October of 2000. Lacey worked as a marketing representative for Southern Wine and Spirits, and then as a substitute teacher. Scott worked as a manager for Trade Corp, specialized fertilizer company. During this time, they remodeled their home and put in a swimming pool and a built-in outdoor barbecue. They liked to socialize with friends, but according to Lacey's mother Sharon, they did not do drugs, engage in any high-risk behaviors, or have any psychological problems. Lacey's sister, Amy Roca, described the couple as getting along very well, and said she had never seen them fight. Nor had Amy ever heard Scott raise his voice. Amy described Scott as someone who tried to give Lacey everything she wanted. Lacey's brother, Brent Roca, described Scott and Lacey's relationship as very positive and happy, and noted that they appreciated each other. One of Lacey's childhood friends, Stacey Boyers, described Scott and Lacey as totally in love. Lacey became pregnant in the spring of 2002, and she went to prenatal yoga, and Lacey and Scott attended a weekly Lamaze class together. Lacey's sister Amy recalls that Scott went to most of Lacey's prenatal doctor appointments, and Amy testified that Lacey and Scott both made lists of baby names and decided together to name their baby Connor. Lacey's stepfather, Ron Gransky, recalled that during Lacey's pregnancy, Scott scheduled regular Sunday dinners with Ron and Sharon so that the family could spend more time together because of the baby. On December 23, 2002, at around 5:45 p.m., Lacey and Scott met Amy at Amy's hair salon so she could cut Scott's hair. Amy showed Lacey how to use a curling iron to style her new cut. While they were at the salon, Lacey called and ordered a pizza to pick up on the way home. Scott invited Amy to join them for dinner. Amy declined because she was meeting a friend who was visiting from out of state. Amy remembers that Lacey and Scott interacted with each other like usual that night, and nothing appeared out of the ordinary. At 8:30 that night, Lacey spoke briefly with her mother Sharon about plans for Christmas Eve dinner the following night. The events of December 24th, 2002. On December 24th, 2002, around 5:15 p.m., Scott called Sharon to see whether Lacey was already at Sharon's house. Scott told her that Lacey's car was in the driveway and their dog Mackenzie was in the backyard with its leash on. Sharon had not seen or spoken with Lacey that day and suggested he call some of Lacey's friends to see if she was with them. Scott also called Amy. Amy described Scott as panicked. Scott called some of Lacey's friends and went door to door in the neighborhood. Neighbor Amy Kriegbaum described Scott as very, very upset and distraught. Lacey's friends Stacey Boyers and Laurie Ellsworth described Scott as upset and panicked. No one had seen Lacey, and Sharon's husband Ron called 911 and the local hospitals. Scott later told police that before he left the house that morning, Lacey said she was going to walk their dog Mackenzie. When he returned, Scott found Mackenzie outside with his leash on. Indeed, at 10:18 that morning, neighbour Karen Service confirmed that Mackenzie was out in the street with his leash on. The leash was moist and covered in leaves and grass clippings. Service put Mackenzie in the Petersons' backyard and shut the gate. When Scott told Sharon Roker about Mackenzie, her first thought was that Lacey must have been walking the dog and thought they should look for her in the park. Scott, Sharon, Amy, Ron and other friends and family met at East Laloma Park near Lacey and Scott's home to look for Lacey. And to note here, Karen Service initially told police that she found Mackenzie at 10:30 a.m, but after looking at sales receipts and a cell phone call from that morning and backtracking, she thought it was closer to 10:18 a.m. when she found Mackenzie. According to Service, after she found the dog, she went to Austin's Patio Furniture, Starbucks, and then made a call to Tom Egan. Her 10:18 timeline estimate relied on a receipt from Austin's Patio Furniture, time-stamped at 10:34 a.m, and cell phone records showing a call to Egan at 10:37 a.m. Now, this is information about the police search of the Peterson home and Scott's truck, warehouse, and boat. So, police officer John Evers contacted Scott as he was searching in the park for Lacey that evening. Evers asked Scott for permission to search the Peterson home. Scott told Evers it was fine to enter the home and search it. Officers later described Scott as very cooperative and noticed that he did not hesitate when asked whether they could search his home. Police took control of Lacey and Scott's home, and Scott was not permitted back in the house that night unless he was accompanied by a police officer. Over the course of the next few days, detectives Braccini and Craig Grogan, with the help of numerous other police officials, searched Lacey and Scott's home. As Detective Braccini himself later admitted on cross-examination, because the detectives had already singled Scott out as the prime suspect in the case, they were specifically searching for any evidence that would link him to Lacey's disappearance and possible murder. There was not much to find. Just outside the Peterson home, officers found a bucket with 2 mops inside. The mops and bucket did not smell of disinfectant or bleach. Both were taken into evidence. When asked about the mops and bucket, Scott explained that Lacey had mopped the floor that morning and he had taken the bucket and dumped the water outside when he returned that afternoon. Inside the house and on top of the clothes washer, officers found some dirty wet rags. These were also taken into evidence. Ultimately, the rags were no more sinister than the mop. Scott explained his assumption that their house cleaner, Margarita Nava, used the rags the day before when she cleaned the house. In fact, Miss Nava later confirmed that she did indeed use the rags to clean the outside windows and the fireplace screen. Police found a curling iron out in the bathroom and also noticed that a rug was scrunched up. Police searched the home for any signs of blood using an alternate light source, but no blood was found. As one of the searching officers, Derek Letzinger, forthrightly conceded, there were no signs at all of foul play in the house. Moreover, as all officers made clear, Scott was extremely cooperative with police. As noted above, he permitted police to search and take control of his house. That same night, Scott allowed Detective Braccini to look at his cell phone and review his call history. Next, Scott consented to a search of his truck parked outside. Scott voluntarily told Detective Braccini that he had a firearm in his glove box from a recent hunting trip. Braccini took the gun from the glove box and put it into his pocket without telling Scott. The gun was later examined. It had not been fired recently. Inside the cab of the truck, Braccini found a Big 5 sporting bag with 2 new fishing lures still in the package and a receipt dated December 20th, 2002 for the lures, a 2-day fishing license for December 23rd and 24th, and a saltwater fishing pole. Scott gave Officer Evers a receipt from the Berkeley Marina stamped 12:54 p.m. on December 24th, 2002. Finally, Braccini searched the large toolbox in the back of Scott's truck and the truck bed where he found 2 tarps and some patio umbrellas. Scott also voluntarily consented to a search of his warehouse and boat. Inside the warehouse, police found Scott's 14-foot aluminium boat on a trailer with 1 circular concrete anchor inside. They also found concrete dust on Scott's trailer, a fishing report about sturgeon fishing in the San Francisco Bay on Scott's desk, and a pair of needle-nosed pliers with a single hair fragment, 5 to 6 inches long and dark in the clamping part of the pliers. Detective Henry Hendy collected the pliers and the single hair and packaged them separately for examination. The hair was consistent with hair found in Lacey's hairbrush. As discussed more fully below, the pliers were so rusted that the state's own forensic expert would admit they had not been used recently. By the first week of January, Scott was under 24-hour surveillance. Scott's phones had also been tapped, and by the third week in January, there was a GPS tracking system placed on his truck. Just to note, when Detective Hendy later opened the evidence envelope, there were 2 hairs on the pliers, not 1. Hendy was not sure whether the hair had broken or whether it had been 2 hairs that looked like 1.